The wind was already slicing through the trees when I first stepped into the frozen forest, the kind of wind that hums against your ears and makes your bones feel hollow. I had been warned by nearly everyone in the nearby village. Don't go in after dusk. Don't follow any voices. Don't look toward the old clearing. But warnings have a strange way of feeding curiosity, and curiosity has always had a tighter grip on me than fear. That night, I had intended only to take a short walk, a foolish idea, given how quickly cold can erase your sense of direction. The ground was a sheet of ice hidden beneath powdered snow, soft enough to fool you, hard enough to break your ankle. My breath curled in front of me, drifting into the dark, as if the forest were waiting to swallow every warm trace I left behind. Locals claimed that winter wasn't the forest's worst season. It was simply the season that revealed what was always there. They spoke of shapes between trees that froze in place the moment you glanced toward them, footsteps that followed in perfect rhythm with your own, and distant cries that could either be a person or something pretending to be one. The first sound I heard was a soft tapping, like someone knocking gently on wood. I turned, expecting to find another hiker, or perhaps an animal. The trail behind me was empty, smoothed out by fresh snowfall. No footprints except mine. The tapping came again. Not rushed. Not frantic. Slow. Methodical. As if someone were patiently waiting for me to respond. I kept walking. My boots crunched louder as I pushed deeper, and with each step, the trees seemed to grow taller, their branches bending over me like ribs of a frozen beast. The air was so cold it seemed to crackle. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied, but the dimness between the trees felt thicker than normal darkness, like it had weight. Then came the smell. Sharp. Metallic. Like cold iron. When I looked up, I saw something I still struggle to justify. A figure standing several yards away, half hidden behind a pine tree. Not moving. Not shivering. Just watching. I lifted my flashlight. The beam landed on the tree trunk, but the figure slipped away faster than I could track. Not walking. Not running. Just disappearing between one breath and the next. I told myself it might have been my imagination, fed by legends the villagers loved to repeat. Stories of old wanderers who froze to death in the woods but never left. Stories of hunters who chased voices and never returned. Stories of a woman, always dressed in white, seen drifting among the trees whenever the temperature dropped below freezing. I brushed the snow off my sleeves and pressed on. The deeper I went, the more wrong the forest felt. No animal prints. No rustling of branches. No distant owl calls. Just silence so thick you could almost hear it settling around you. But the tapping returned. This time, it sounded closer. Much closer. I spun around, flashlight beam jerking across the trees. Nothing. Not even a hint of movement. The wind had stopped completely, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Only the tapping remained, coming from multiple directions, echoing unnaturally, bouncing from trunk to trunk. I pulled my scarf tighter around my mouth and took a few slow steps backward. That's when I noticed it. Another set of footprints. They were behind me but not far behind. And they were fresh. So fresh that the edges were still sharply defined. I dropped to one knee and inspected them closer. The prints were narrow, long, and barefoot. Barefoot in weather cold enough to freeze skin solid in minutes. I stood up quickly, heart pounding, breath fogging violently. Something was following me. I hurried down the trail, my steps faster now, crunching loudly. But every time I looked back, the footprints multiplied, appearing behind me even when I had walked in a straight line without stopping. As if someone were stepping into place right after I moved. Snow began to fall harder, swirling around me in thick, frantic gusts. My flashlight flickered again, then went out completely. Darkness enveloped me, heavier than anything I'd ever felt. I slapped the flashlight, shook it, but the light wouldn't return. Then I heard it. A voice. Soft. Female. Whispering my name. Come back. My throat tightened. The voice wasn't familiar, yet it spoke with the certainty of someone who knew me deeply. The kind of tone your mother uses to wake you gently from a nightmare. Except here, the nightmare was outside me. I stumbled forward again, practically running now, but the snowstorm made it nearly impossible to see. The voice grew sharper behind me, first calling, then coaxing, then begging. Don't leave me here. It's cold. It's so cold. I covered my ears with my gloves. The voice seeped through anyway. You came to find me, didn't you? Don't stop now. I wasn't looking for anyone, but something wanted me to believe I was. The wind suddenly roared back to life, shaking branches violently overhead. Snow blasted into my face. And out of the storm, I saw movement, a glimmer of white fabric drifting between the trees, carried not by the wind, but by intention. The woman in white. Her hair, long and tangled, whipped around her face. Her feet hovered inches above the snow. And her eyes, hollow, colorless, wide, locked onto me with chilling precision. I turned and ran. Branches snapped behind me. Something moved unnaturally fast, closing the distance effortlessly despite my full sprint. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. The cold sliced into my skin like knives. Then the forest changed. The trees ahead stood in a tight circle, their trunks perfectly aligned, unnaturally symmetrical. I didn't choose to run into the clearing. The storm shoved me there. The moment I stepped inside, the wind stopped again. Every tree around me stood still. The air settled, and the temperature plunged. It was so cold, brutally, impossibly cold, that my eyelashes froze together. My breath turned to icy crystals that hung suspended for a moment before falling. I wasn't alone in the clearing. Shapes hung from the branches. Dozens of them. At first I thought they were frost-covered sacks or hunks of ice, but then I saw faces. Frozen faces with mouths twisted open in silent screams. Eyes wide. Skin pale and frostbitten. People. People the forest had taken. One of them, the closest to me, seemed almost alive. His eyes flicked slightly toward me, as if trying to warn me. His lips trembled, and a faint whisper escaped. Run. I stumbled backward in horror. That's when the tapping started again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the trees. It was coming from inside the frozen bodies, their fingers tapping against the bark, cracking the ice that held them, like they were trying to break free. The woman in white glided into the clearing, her feet not disturbing the snow, her hair floating gently as if underwater. She reached out a pale, skeletal hand toward me. You came for me, she whispered. I shook my head violently. No, I didn't. But I came for you. The forest groaned. Ice cracked loudly. The bodies hanging in the trees began shifting, turning toward me slowly, their frozen joints snapping. I broke into a sprint again, forcing my frozen legs to respond. My flashlight suddenly flickered back to life in my hand, illuminating a narrow path between the trees. I didn't look back. Not when I heard the voices calling after me. Not when the tapping grew frantic. Not when the woman cried out in a voice that seemed to shake the ground itself. I ran until my lungs felt shredded. I ran until the snow thinned. I ran until the first distant lights of the village appeared, blurry through tears and ice. And I didn't stop running until I burst into the warmth of the nearest cabin, collapsing on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. The villagers didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. They knew where I had been. They wrapped me in blankets, fed me hot broth, and whispered prayers under their breath. After hours of trembling, I finally asked the question I feared most. Who is she? An old man, his face carved with decades of winter, looked at me with dead seriousness. She's the cold widow, he said. A spirit bound to the forest. She died long ago during a blizzard, searching for her family. Now she searches for anyone foolish enough to answer her voice. The frozen bodies you saw weren't the first. They won't be the last. I swallowed hard. Why does she call people by name? The man sighed heavily. She doesn't. She says whatever will make you turn around. I didn't sleep that night. Not even after the warmth returned to my bones. The wind outside the cabin whistled against the window, long and low. And for a moment, just a moment, I heard a whisper outside. A woman's voice. Soft. Familiar. Calling my name.